Hello everyone. I am going to discuss the process of conducting research using quantitative and qualitative approaches. So the learning objectives are, by the end of this chapter, we should be able to define and describe the importance of educational research, describe the 6 steps in the process of research, identify the characteristics of quantitative and qualitative research in the 6 steps, identify the type of research designs associated with quantitative and qualitative research, discuss important ethical issues in conducting research, recognize skills needed to design and conduct research. So, what is research? Research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. At a general level, research consists of 3 steps. First is that the researcher poses a question. Posing a question is the initial step where a researcher formulates a question or hypothesis based on observations, existing knowledge, or a gap in understanding. So the question should be clear, specific, and testable. Number 2, the researcher collects data to answer the question. Once the question is defined, the researcher gathers relevant data through a various methods such as experiments, observations, surveys, or analysis of existing information. Number 3, the researcher presents an answer to the question. So, after collecting and analyzing the data, the researcher interprets the findings and presents an answer to the initial question. This answer may confirm or modify existing theories or hypotheses. The presentation of answer often involves communicating the findings through scientific publications, presentations, or other forms of dissemination. Importance of research. Number 1, research adds to our knowledge. Research expands our understanding of the world. It uncovers new information, discovers patterns, and tests theories. It contributes to a human knowledge. It also gives a scientific research in terms of medicine, technology, and in education also. It also enhances our collective knowledge and driving progress. Number 2, research helps improve practice. So, research provides evidence-based insights that can inform and improve practices in a various fields such as healthcare, education, and business. So by conducting research, professionals can identify effective strategies, best practices, and areas for improvement that could lead to a better outcome and higher quality of services. Number 3, research helps inform policy debates. So, research provides policymakers with reliable evidence and data to make informed decisions on complex issues. So, by analyzing research findings, policymakers can understand the implications of different policies, evaluate their effectiveness, and develop evidence-based solutions to societal challenges. Problems with the research today. Number 1, contradictory or vague findings. Number 2, questionable data. Unclear statements about the intent of the study. Lack of full disclosure of the data collection procedure. Inarticulate rendering of the research problem. So first, contradictory or vague findings. Sometimes, in different studies say different things about the same topic, which can be confusing. Or a study might not explain things clearly, making it hard to understand. Number 2, questionable data. This means that the information collected for a study might not be accurate. And number 3, unclear statements about the intent of the study. It means that the study doesn't clearly say why it's being done or what it's trying to figure out. Number 4, lack of full disclosure of the data collection procedure. This means that the study doesn't explain exactly how the information was collected. And lastly, inarticulate rendering of the research problem. This means that the study doesn't explain the problem, what it's trying to be, what it's trying to solve. The 6 steps in the process of research. So, this approach described by Kerlinger to 1972 and Liddy and Ormrod 2001. So, it is identified as a scientific method because it follows a structured and systematic approach to conducting research. So, number 1, identify a problem that defines the goal of research. So, this first step involves figuring out what you want to study or to understand. You start by asking a question or identifying an issue that you are curious about. Number 2, make a prediction that, if confirmed, resolves the problem. So once you identified the problem, you make a guess or a prediction about what you think might happen. So this prediction also help you to answer your question. Number 3, gather data relevant to this prediction. So with your prediction in your mind, you collect information or data that will help you test whether your prediction is true. You might gather data by conducting surveys, doing experiments, or analyzing existing information. And lastly, analyze and interpret the data to see if it supports the prediction and resolves the question that initiated the research. So, once you have your data, you analyze it to see if it supports your prediction. You look for patterns or relationships in the data that could help you to answer your research question. The research process cycle. First, identify the research problem. Next, review the literature. Specify a research purpose. Collect data. Analyze and interpret data. And lastly, report and evaluate research. So, let us find out what is the identify the research problem. So, identifying a research problem, it is the starting point of any research study. So, you need to figure out what you want to investigate or learn more about. It could be a question you have or an issue you want to explore. Number 2, reviewing the literature. So, before you proceed into your own research, it is also important to see other studies that is already done on your topic. You can gather it by reading books, articles, and studies that are related to your research problem. This helps you understand what's already known and what gaps exist in the current knowledge. And number 3, specifying a purpose for research. So, once you know what's been studied before, you decide what you want to achieve with your own research. You define a clear purpose or goal of your study. Next, collecting data. With your purpose in mind, you gather information or data that will help you answer your research question. So this could involve surveys, interviews, observations, or experiments depending in your study. Analyzing and interpreting the data. So once you have your data, you analyze it to see what it tells you. You look for patterns or relationships in data. Then, you interpret what these findings mean in relation to your research question. It involves drawing conclusions about it by representing tables, figures, and pictures to summarize it. Lastly, report and evaluating research. So you write up your findings and share to others about your research. This could be in a research paper, presentation, or report. By following these steps, researchers can conduct thorough and systematic studies that contribute to our own understanding of various topics, including education.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us now explore the characteristics of quantitative and qualitative research in each of the 6 steps. So, conducting educational research is more than engaging in the major steps in the process of research. It also includes designing and writing the research in one of the 2 major tracks: quantitative research and qualitative research. The way that this unfolds is illustrated in the flow of the research process as shown in figure 1.3. So, this is the figure 1.3, flow of the research process through quantitative and qualitative research. So, based on the nature of the research problem and the questions that will be asked to address the problem, and accompanying a review of the literature that establishes the importance of the problem, the researcher chooses either the quantitative or qualitative research track. The problem, the questions, and the literature reviews help to steer the researcher towards either the quantitative or qualitative track. This, in turn, inform the specific research design to be used. So in quantitative, experimental, correlational, and survey. In combined designs, mixed methods, and action research. In qualitative designs, grounded theory, ethnography, and narrative. So, and the procedures involved in them, such as sampling, data collection, instruments or protocols, the procedures, the data analysis, and the final interpretation of results. Let us now discuss the quantitative research characteristics. So in quantitative research, the major characteristics are: first, describing a research problem through a description of trends or a need for an explanation of the relationship among variables. So in quantitative research, the investigator identifies a research problem based on trends in the field or on the need to explain why something occurs. So describing a trend means that the research problem can be answered best by a study in which the researcher seeks to establish the overall tendency of responses from individuals and to note how this tendency varies among people. However, some quantitative research problems require that you explain how one variable affects another. So variables, these are an attribute, for example, attitude toward the school band issue, or characteristics of individuals, example, gender. So that researchers study by explaining a relation among variables. You are interested in determining whether one or more variables might influence another variable. Second is providing a major role for the literature through suggesting the research questions to be asked and justifying the research problem and creating a need for the direction, a purpose statement, and research questions or hypothesis of the study. So in reviewing the literature, in quantitative research, you will typically see a substantial literature review at the beginning of the study. Thus, the literature plays a major role in 2 ways: justifying the need for the research problem and suggesting potential purposes and research questions for the study. So justifying the research problem means that you use the literature to document the importance of the issue examined in the study. So to accomplish this, you search the literature, locate studies that identify the problem as important to examine, and then cite this literature in the opening sections of a research report. So the literature also creates a need for the study as expressed specifically in the purpose statement and the research questions or hypotheses. Third, creating purpose statements, research questions, and hypotheses that are specific, narrow, measurable, and observable. So in quantitative research questions, you ask specific, narrow questions to obtain measurable and observable data on variables. So the major statements and questions of direction in a study, the purpose statement, the research questions, and the hypothesis are specific and narrow because you identify only a few variables to study. So from a study of these variables, you obtain measures or assessments on an instrument or record, scores on a scale from observations. Fourth is collecting numeric data from a large number of people using instruments with preset questions and responses. So in quantitative data collection, you use an instrument to measure the variables in the study. An instrument is a tool for measuring, observing, or documenting quantitative data. It contains specific questions and response possibilities that you could establish or develop in advance of the study. So examples of instruments are survey questionnaires, standardized tests, and checklists that you might use to observe a student's or teacher's behaviors. You administer this instrument to participants and collect data in the form of numbers. Fifth, analyzing trends, comparing groups, or relating variables using statistical analysis and interpreting results by comparing them with prior predictions and past research. So in quantitative data analysis, you analyze the data using mathematical procedures called statistics. So this analysis consists of breaking down the data into parts to answer the research questions. Statistical procedures, such as comparing groups or relating scores for individuals, provide information to address the research questions or hypotheses. You then interpret the results of this analysis in light of initial predictions or prior studies. This interpretation is an explanation as to why the results turned out the way they did, and often you will explain how the results either support or refute the expected predictions in the study. Sixth, writing the research report using standard fixed structures and evaluation criteria and taking an objective, unbiased approach. So in reporting and evaluating quantitative research, the overall format for a study follows a predictable pattern. Introduction, review of the literature, methods, results, and discussions. This form creates a standardized structure for quantitative studies. In addition, it also leads to specific criteria that you might use to judge the quality of a quantitative research report. Let us now explore the qualitative research characteristics. So in qualitative research, we see different major characteristics at each stage of the research process. First, exploring a problem and developing a detailed understanding of a central phenomenon. When we say central phenomenon, it is the key concept, idea, or process studied in qualitative research. So qualitative research is best suited to address a research problem in which you do not know the variables and need to explore. The literature might yield little information about the phenomenon of study, and you need to learn more from participants through exploration. Second, having the literature review plays a minor role but justify the problem. So in qualitative research, the literature review plays a less substantial role at the beginning of the study than in quantitative research. In qualitative research, although you may review the literature to justify the need to study the research problem, the literature does not provide major direction for the research questions. The reason for this is that qualitative research relies more on the views of participants in the study and less on the direction identified in the literature by the researcher. Those to use the literature to foreshadow or specify the direction for the study is inconsistent with the qualitative approach of learning from participants. Third, stating the purpose and research questions in a general and broad way so as to the participants' experiences. So in qualitative research, the purpose statement and research questions are stated so that you can best learn from participants. You research a single phenomenon of interest and state this phenomenon in a purpose statement. Fourth, collecting data based on words from a small number of individuals so that the participants' views are obtained. So in qualitative research, you collect data to learn from the participants in the study and develop forms called protocols for recording data as the study proceeds. So these forms pose general questions so that the participants can provide answers to the questions. Often questions on these forms will change and emerge during data collection. Examples of these forms include an interview protocol, which consists of 4 or 5 questions, or an observational protocol in which the researcher records notes about the behavior of participants. Moreover, you gather text or word or image or picture data. So transcribe audio recordings from a database composed of words. Fifth is analyzing the data for description and themes using text analysis and interpreting the larger meaning to the findings. So in qualitative research, typically you gather a text database. So the data analysis of text consists of dividing it into groups of sentences called text segments and determining the meaning of each group of sentences. Rather than using statistics, you analyze word or pictures to describe the central phenomenon under study. The result may be a description of individual people or places. In some qualitative studies, the entire report is mostly a long description of several individuals. So the result may also include themes or broad categories that represent your findings. In qualitative studies in which you both describe individuals and identify themes, a rich, complex picture emerges. From this complex picture, you make an interpretation of the meaning of the data by reflecting on how the findings relate to existing research by stating a personal reflection about the significance of the lessons learned during the study, or by drawing out a larger, more abstract meaning. Sixth, writing the report using flexible emerging structures and evaluative criteria and including the researcher's subjective reflexibility and bias. So in reporting qualitative research, you employ a wide range of formats to report your studies. Although the overall general form follows the standard steps in the process of research, the sequence of these parts of research tends to vary from one qualitative report to another. So a study may begin with a long personal narrative told in story form, or with a more objective scientific report that resembles qualitative research. With such variability, it is not surprising that the standards for evaluating qualitative research also are flexible. So good qualitative reports, however, need to be realistic and persuasive to convince the reader that the study is an accurate and credible account. So qualitative reports typically contain extensive data collection to convey the complexity of the phenomenon or process. Let us now discuss the similarities and differences between quantitative and qualitative research. So at this point, you may be asking how quantitative research and qualitative research are similar and different. In terms of similarity, both forms of research follows the 6 steps in the process of research. So also, both quantitative and qualitative data collection may employ similar approaches such as interviews and observations. So now let's talk about their differences. So in quantitative research, the research problem section is used to direct the types of questions or hypotheses asked in the study, whereas in qualitative research, the research problem discussion is typically used to establish the importance of the central idea. So, quantitative approaches use more closed-ended approaches in which the researcher identifies set response categories. For example, strongly agree, strongly disagree, and so forth. So whereas qualitative approaches use more open-ended approaches in which the inquirer asks general questions of participants and the participants shape the response possibilities. Example, in an interview with a teacher, a qualitative researcher might ask, "What does professional development mean to you?" So there are also distinct differences that go beyond the forms of data gathering. So in data analysis, the procedures are quite different. In quantitative research, rather, the investigation relies on statistical analysis, also called as mathematical analysis of the data, which is typically in numeric form. In qualitative research, statistics are not used to analyze the data. Instead, the inquirer analyzes words, example transcriptions from interviews, or images, for example, the photographs. So rather than relying on statistical procedures, the qualitative researcher analyzes the words to group them into larger meanings of understanding, such as codes, categories, or themes. So the reporting formats are also typically different, with the quantitative structure following the typical introduction, literature review, methods, results, and conclusion sections. In qualitative research, some of these sections may be missing. Example, the literature review in the Sheldon 2010 study. And the format may be more of a literary opening with a personal passage, an unfolding story, the use of extensive quotes from participants, and personal reflections from the researcher. So the next slide is research designs associated with quantitative and qualitative research. So when we say research designs, these are the specific procedures involved in the research process: data collection, data analysis, and report writing. So Figure 1.4 illustrates how the steps in the research process relate to quantitative and qualitative research, and advances 8 different research designs used by educational researchers. Figure 1.4 types of quantitative and qualitative research designs and their primary uses. So in quantitative research designs, there are experimental research, correlational research, and survey research. In qualitative research designs, grounded theory research, ethnographic research, and narrative research. So in combined quantitative or qualitative research designs are mixed method research and action research. So let us define the different research designs. So experimental designs, also called intervention studies or group comparison studies, are procedures in quantitative research in which the investigator determines whether an activity or materials make a difference in result for participants. So correlational designs are procedures in quantitative research in which investigators measure the degree of association or relation between two or more variables using the statistical procedures of correlational analysis. Survey designs are procedures in quantitative research in which you administer a survey or questionnaire to a small group of people called the sample to identify trends in attitudes, opinions, behaviors, or characteristics of a large group of people called the population. So third I mean, fourth is grounded theory designs. So instead of studying a single group, you might examine a number of individuals who have all experienced an action, interaction, or process. So grounded theory designs are systematic, qualitative procedures that researchers use to generate a general explanation. So, grounded in the views of participants, called a grounded theory that explains a process, action, or interaction among people.
So, ethnographic design. So, here you may be interested in studying one group of individuals and examining them in the setting where they lived and work, and in developing a portrait of how they interact. So, ethnographic designs, it involves studying people or cultures in their natural setting to understand their behaviors, beliefs, and social structures. So, researchers here immerse themselves in the community they are studying. So, for example, researchers actively participate in a community they are studying by observing and interacting with the members to gain understanding. For example, uh, studying the daily lives of indigenous tribes in the forest, or to understand the way of their living. So that is ethnographic designs. So next is narrative research designs. So here you may be interested in describing and interpreting group behavior or ideas, or in developing an explanation grounded in the experiences of many individuals. But instead, you wish to tell the stories of one or two individuals. So, a narrative research design, this is uh, when researchers collect and study people's stories to understand their experiences. So, narrative research designs are also qualitative procedures in which researchers describe the lives of individuals and collect and tell stories about these individuals' lives. Like, for example, researchers might gather the stories from, for example, a cancer survivors, to learn how they deal with their illness, like that. So that is the narrative research designs. So here, mixed methods designs, you decide to collect both the quantitative data and the qualitative data. So the core argument for a mixed method design is that the combination of both forms of data provides uh, a better understanding of a research problem than qualitative or quantitative data by itself. So, mixed method design, this means using the both surveys in the interviews to study something, both the quantitative and the qualitative data. So, for instance, uh, a study on teaching might involve asking students questions. So this can be survey, and also talking to teachers, interviews, to get a full understanding. So this mixed method designs are procedure for collecting, analyzing, and mixing both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study, or in a multi-phase series of studies. Next is action research designs. So like mixed method research, the action research design is often utilize also both the quantitative and the qualitative data. But the action research designs, they focus more on procedures that is useful in addressing practical problems in school and in classroom. So this is the action research designs. This is when researchers and people who work in the field, like for example teachers, the doctors, or uh, teachers and doctors, for example, team up to solve real problems. So, action research design is a systematic procedure used by teachers for other individuals in educational settings to gather the quantitative and the qualitative data to address improvements in their educational settings, or their teaching and their learning for their students. So, for example, the teacher here might work with researchers to try a new teaching method and see if they can help students to get or to learn better, to get better. So that is action research designs. So the important ethical issues in conducting research. So ethical issues in research are crucial to ensure the well-being and the rights of participants are protected. So, this important ethical issues in conducting research are about making sure that the research is done in a fair and responsible way. So, um, by addressing issues such as informed consent. So, for example, if a researchers must make sure that people know what they are agreeing to and when they participate in studies. For example, if uh, if someone agrees to be in that study, for example about medicine, so they should know all the potential and risk and the benefits of that study before they agree. For example, also the confidentiality. So, researchers must keep the participants' personal information privately. So, they should not share it with anyone who doesn't need to know. And next is fairness. So, the researchers should treat all the participants fairly and equally. They should not discriminate based on things like race, gender, or age. So, um, this ethical issues in conducting research is very crucial to ensure the rights of every participants who joined the study. So institutional review boards. So campus offices develop to monitor adherence to these three principles, and offices of institutional review boards emerge. So institutional review boards, or the IRBs. These are the groups that make sure that the research study are ethical and safe for participants. So this review research proposal before the study starts. Federal funds could be withheld from campuses if research conducted on those campuses did not protect the treatment of participants. So these groups, they make sure that the studies are safe for the participants who joined in this study. So like for example, before a scientist or researchers can do a study on people, uh, they have to get approval from an IRB, or the institutional review boards. So the IRB checks if the study is fair, safe, and respects the people's right. So that is institutional review boards. So professional association, ethical standards are also available from professional associations. So according to these guidelines, individuals who participate in a study have a certain rights. So before participating in research, individuals need to know the purpose and aim of the study and how the results will be used and the likely social consequences the study will have on their lives. So this professional association, these are organizations that set standards and guidelines for research in specific fields. So they help researchers, or this professional association help researchers understand how to conduct ethical research. So like for example, uh, the APA, or the American Psychological Association, they has a guidelines for psychologists on how to treat their participants with respect and fairness. Next is ethical practices throughout the research process. So ethical practices are crucial throughout the entire process. It is more than just following rules. It involves considering ethics from the start to finish. So this ethics should be a priority, especially in data collection, reporting, and sharing findings. So ethical practices, this means doing the right thing at every step of the research, from planning to reporting the results. Like for example, the researchers should always get permission from participants before starting a study. Treat them with respect during the study and be honest about the results when they report them. So that is the ethical, or one of the examples of ethical practices throughout the research process. Some ethical issues in data collection. So it includes here respecting research site by getting permission, minimizing disruption, and behaving like a guest. So this involves making sure the way data is collected is fair and doesn't cause harm to anyone. Let's just say, for example, here um, the Lincoln Public Schools in Nebraska offers guidelines for researching in schools with minimal disruption. And another example is our researchers should not uh, pressure people into answering questions or invade their privacy when collecting data. Next is some ethical issues in data reporting. So it involves showing respect to audience by reporting findings honestly and without alteration defeat certain interests. So researchers uh, should provide uh, preliminary copies of publication to the research site, like avoid plagiarism, credit other studies properly, use understandable language, and share findings openly. So uh, this means being honest, being honest and accurate when sharing the results of the study. Or for example, a researcher should not leave out data that doesn't support their hypothesis just to make their findings look better. So it is important for also for educators, so as educators, to communicate the practical significance of the research and to publish and disseminate the results even if they go against accepted standards. So skills needed to design and conduct research. So as a new researcher, you may wonder if you have the skills, like for example, to read, evaluate, and conduct research. However, skills like problem solving, having a long attention span, using libraries and writing are valuable skills you already have, or you already process from life experiences. For example, if you know how to solve puzzles, this could involve respecting intellectual property rights, giving credits to the puzzle creators, and not cheating or copying others' work. And also having or lengthening your attention span. This might involve ethical issues related to the use of technology or methods that could potentially manipulate or harm attention span. And learning to use library resources. So ethical issues might include proper citation of source, respecting copyright laws, and not plagiarizing others' work. So, for example, this solving puzzles. So researchers approach as puzzles to solve, viewing the research process as assembling a series of puzzle pieces. So as we daily as we daily solving puzzles, it assembling research puzzle pieces such as defining a research problem and specifying study purposes requires ensuring that all the pieces fit together seamlessly. Next is the lengthening your attention span. So we all bring attention span of varying lengths to the process of research. But if we consider the task we love and the amount of time we devote to them, we can see that we have already developed an attention span long enough to spend considerable time at research. So next is learning to use library resources. So by reviewing literature in research process, it involves spending time in an academic library. A skills that starts with, for example, visiting school libraries or with home that has a computer and internet to access or assessing library resources even if at home lang. So a research also requires skills in locating, summarizing, and writing about studies, which are developed over time and through experience with libraries, starting from school and continuing into adulthood. And lastly, the writing, editing, and more writing. So writing is essential, one of the essential aspects of research because it involves a multiple jobs, feedback, and revisions. So researchers write for an audience requiring communication skills. So if you enjoy writing and completing project, you likely to have experience writing essays or research report. So that's all.